Hello everybody, Contrarian Dude here, and welcome to This Week in Tyranny for November 23rd, 2015. And let's start with a tweet here from Bernie Sanders, speaking about the merger between Pfizer and Allergan. He says, "This merger would be a disaster for Americans who already pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs." Shortly after that, Hillary chimed in and came out blasting Republicans for enabling tax inversions and vowing to crack down on companies moving abroad and paying their fair share. So as a quick catch up for everybody, what is a tax inversion? Well, it's a piece of financial engineering that multinational companies, particularly from the US, have turned to in order to reduce their tax bill. In a tax inversion, one company buys a rival based in a different country with a less onerous tax policy. It then reincorporates by shifting the address of its headquarters to the country with the lighter tax burden. In many cases, the operational headquarters, the main business, might remain in the original country, but they simply hold some of its board meetings in the new jurisdictions. This just frustrates me about the left so much. They're just oblivious to the consequences, the very obvious consequences of their policies. And even when you explain to them in advance and say, if you jack up taxes anymore, if you increase the taxes on either corporate income tax or personal income tax, if you keep jacking up taxes, then what's going to happen is the people with money or the talented people, the people who are able to produce, they're going to leave. So this idiot Hillary thinks she can crack down on companies. Like, you can just make a law without destroying the incentive and get the job done. Listen, you've got to get this through your head, people on the left. It's no good to just make a law banning shit. If the incentive remains, people just work their way around. I mean, look, if you can get drugs in a prison, and there are drugs in every prison in the United States, in that total lockdown environment, the incentive is people really want drugs, and they find a way to get it in. Do you really think you're going to pass a law that the very, very richest, most powerful people in the country, with all their lobbying money and judges and congressmen and people in their back pockets, they're not going to figure out a way to get their profits offshore? It's fucking impossible. It will never, ever, ever happen. But these delusional dipshits want to make the debate about making the law. It's a complete waste of time. There is one way and one way only to keep the profits here, and that is to reduce the taxes so that people want to stay. What you want is you want all the talented people from other countries abandoning those countries and coming here, creating jobs, bringing investment, bringing their money. That's what you want. But you know what? Let's be morons for a minute. Let's say that this is going to work. We'll abandon all logic, all reason, and all evidence and say, yes, the government's going to pass a law and close all the loopholes like they've never done ever before, ever in the history of the world, and they're going to stop these corporations from taking their profits offshore. And thank God we voted Bernie in, because that's what we got. Let's assume that happens for a second. What do you think is going to happen for the next generation? Are people going to start businesses in America knowing that this is what's waiting for them? Of course not. If the companies that are here, that are existing here, have all their infrastructure here, have so many employees here, if they're dying to get their business offshore and out of this country, well, what about the people who are going to start a business and don't have any of those hurdles yet? They can just start a business wherever they want. Of course they're going to start their business overseas. I mean, go and read out the shrug, for God's sakes, you morons. Who is John Galt? Talented, productive people will leave this environment. And worse still, you can just never ever know exactly how much damage you're doing yourself. How many businesses were started in a different country instead of the US because of how onerous the tax laws are in US, because of how high the taxes are in US? We'll never know. And because of that, these hapless goats on the left will remain ignorant forever. Any sensible person would look at this and say, wow, the existing companies that are here and doing well and making profits are so irritated by this frustration, they're desperate to get out of this country. I'm probably creating too large a disincentive for businesses in this country. I should probably reconsider my position. But no, these sociopaths always want to double down. In addition to ridiculously high taxes in this country, I'm going to add another layer of difficulty for businesses. I'm going to make it impossible for them to leave if they ever want to. Moving on to another topic, it is becoming blindingly obvious to anyone paying the least bit of attention that there is a very clear and deliberate attempt to create as much division in society as possible. There's race wars, gender wars, class wars, religious wars, Almost every time you turn on the TV, watch any kind of mainstream media, listen to any kind of politician speak, you'll hear about how someone is a victim of some other group in society. Never the politicians, just some other group in society. And the reporting is just so biased. I mean, look at this ridiculous example. So I heard about this story, the Jeremy Martyr shooting. And I was reading about this story. It's about two cops who just basically fired 18 shots into a vehicle. There's a man with his hands up in the air at the steering wheel, just no threat to anybody. The body cams that the cops were wearing show it basically as an execution. And there was a little boy, a 6-year-old, in the back seat, and he was murdered in this shootout. And I just thought, oh my God, there's going to be more riots in the streets. Where's the hashtags? As there should be. People are going to wake up and realize they're living in a police state again. What's going on? And I look at it, but I thought, hang on, I haven't heard about any of this. Why haven't I? I scroll down and I see, and there's your answer. The cops who were doing the shooting look to be darkish, and Whitey McWhiteson's 6-year-old over here, his sin is that he is white. This doesn't play into the storyline of blacks are oppressed by whites. So no coverage, no one gives a shit. This story just gets washed over. Compared to how many times this would be played over and over and over again if it was white cops and a black kid. In Saudi Arabia, this poet was sentenced to death for renouncing Islam. Now, if Syria did this, or if this happened in Iran, then this would be all over the news, because there's an agenda. We have to go and start wars there and meddle in their business. And so they have to be demonized, and you have to be convinced that we're doing the Syrian people a favor by going in and bombing the country and slaughtering them and whatever else. But when it happens in Saudi Arabia, allies of ours, well, it doesn't even get mentioned. It's just ignored. You have to realize that just the news is not real anymore. It's just theater. They pick and choose stories, they exaggerate stories, they flat out lie in stories and falsify evidence in the news media to get you to think whatever it is they want you to think. And one of the primary things that they're pushing right now is this division. They will blatantly lie to you about gender wage gaps, rape culture, and all this kind of nonsense to inflame the gender wars. In Mizzou last week, the mainstream media just repeated the lie day after day about how I think it was the dean whose car ran over the black student and hit him and assaulted him, and then the video came out. It was actually this black guy ran up and started banging on the car. That was the assault that the car did to him. And just any opportunity they can find to provoke this thing and convince blacks that they're victims, convince women that they're victims, convince poor people that they're victims, not of the government, which they are actually all victims of the government, but of other members of society, the sheep. To the degree they can get us divided and have us fighting against each other, then we will not pay attention to the advancement of tyranny that is happening at the government level.